Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken.
Hey, Kiernan.
Ryan, your high was a little muted. Are you okay?
Well, it is a morning episode, and in
a
the
little,
morning,
little earlier than we typically record.
Well, I don't know if we've become more morning owls. What do they call it?
I think morning worms, right? Because birds come and get the worms.
Early birds.
Yeah, so we're kind of early worms.
Right.
No, I'm saying we're the worms. The bird just comes down and chops our head off.
Probably more accurate.
Well, listen, we maybe should consider more afternoon and evening because I like that hi. I like hi, but today it was more like hi. Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ryan, super
people
excited.
have T-shirts made that say hi, and I'm like, oh, that's my hi.
Yeah, no, that's our merch. Hi. We've trademarked that. Right. Today, great topic. We are continuing. Boy, this month we are doing a lot of city spotlights.
People love our city spotlights. We get that kind of feedback all the time.
That's true. The popular episodes. So, we're delivering, and we're using the month of January. We're having two different episodes about Canadian cities, our neighbor to the north. And today we're going to talk about the Quebec City. And I've been there. You haven't. So just as you educated me about Medellin last week, I'm going to educate you about Quebec City, and then you're going to feel threatened. And so next week, you're going to talk to me about Montreal, where I haven't been.
And you're going to get to hear both of our amazing French.
I actually intentionally went through and minimized all the French that I would need to say.
I'm going to do the whole episode in French. So, I mean, or maybe with a mime. I'll just mime the entire thing.
Happily in Quebec, everybody is speaking English as well. The signage is in both. French, I think, is preferred. But even if we wanted to do French, it doesn't sound the same in Quebec. They have their own dialect that sounds different than France. It's totally it's like a neighboring language to French.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like the way that Spanish varies everywhere you go, right?
Sorry.
Like how Spanish varies, like how Spanish is different
are you
than
saying
Mexico.
Spanish fairies?
Spanish varies.
Oh, fairies!
Spanish fairies. That's a whole other episode.
Spanish fairies. They just come down. They ping you with your wand. You understand Spanish. Because I've always assumed, while you can't pronounce Spanish, you understand it perfectly. That's in my head. That's the dream. People talk to you, and you know exactly what they're saying. You can't express it back.
I don't think that's entirely not true.
but as we learned at the end of last episode, you have mastered anoche.
Anoche.
Last night. I know usually you're using that in terms of things you regret from the previous night.
Almost always. Yeah.
Now, Ryan, if I'm not mistaken, you've brought today a recalculating. So let's hit the recalculating.
Recalculating.
All right. So you Ryan, you know what this is. Typically, this is a segment where
you've made a mistake.
No.
And we revisit a prior segment.
No, recalculating is when we come back to a topic we've talked about before. Sometimes you're right; it's a mistake. You always say it's me. Rarely me. Usually you, but sometimes me. Not I'm all about correcting the record. But in this case, I believe we are following up on a topic, not correcting anything, but we're giving new piece of information about something we dove deep on in the past.
Right. You interviewed in one of our, what I like to call the early episodes. This
one is one of the greats. It's in the Hall of Fame.
The basement recordings, the early episodes. We did an interview with your dear friend. What was his name?
Professor Matthew Weinzierl at Harvard Business School.
Right,
and he studies space tourism. And I will put the episode in the show notes if you need to go revisit it. I think it's one of the most interesting interviews we've done.
And so after that interview, I don't think anybody would listen and not be excited about the prospect of space tourism, right?
Absolutely. I remember coming off thinking, boy, this is like much closer than I thought. And he really planted in my head all like the life-changing experience that it would be to look back on the globe from afar, to experience weightlessness. It would be just a total new frontier of human experience.
Yeah, I am with you, of course.
The ultimate travel.
So what YouGov, the polling organization, they have just polled Britons, folks who live in the ever shrinking amount. They have to check real quick. Are you still in
Say
Britain?
goodbye to Scotland, everybody.
So there's folks, I think, who live in Metro London at this point.
Well, I mean, in the best case scenario, that's true.
So they asked them, would you want to go to the moon to visit? Assuming if your safety was guaranteed, right? Because if someone comes up to you in the street and says, "Hey, you want to go to the moon?" That sounds dangerous.
I have kids. I
can't do that right now. Right.
So they said in the question that your safety is guaranteed. You will get back.
They wanted to get that out, so that they were thinking, this is going to be an easy poll. We're going to have a lot of people wanting to go to the moon.
Sure, of course.
Just not true.
In fact, if I were the editor, probably would have been like, "This is idiotic."
Yeah,
you're fired. This is the dumbest question you could possibly be polling.
So what we understand now is that more people in Britain said they would turn down a trip to the moon than take the trip to the moon. 48 to 43%.
It's insane.
Yeah, and the number one reason was not interested.
I mean, here's what I understand about that. What I understand is, it's a lot of dust and it's gray rocks.
Right.
I mean,
You've been to Alaska. Isn't that the same? A lot of dust and rocks. Isn't that basically the,
But I think, not interested. It's insane.
Yeah.
What kind of incurious person could possibly say that? Brits.
Well, the number two reason at 11% is nothing to see or do there. Nothing to see or do in the moon. The moon doesn't have a Six Flags. That's essentially the complaint.
But you know what they do have? One flag. They have one flag that was planted there by America. You could go and see that flag. That's like one of the great historic landmarks of all time.
Yeah, that would be, I think, something to see. I mean, you wouldn't do a lot there.
What's super fascinating about that flag? This is a true story. So when they were planning to go to the moon, and they were obviously tons and tons of planning of down to every minute detail, and they knew they were going to bring a flag, and they realized at the last second, the flag can't wave because there's not wind on the moon. There's no
wind
atmosphere.
Even I knew that.
And so they had to jerry rig, within a few months of the launch, a pole that actually folds out and snaps almost like a tent pole, and it snaps at a right angle. So you can see when you look at that flag, it's not waving. It's actually just kind of lethargically hanging off a right angle.
Couldn't they just made the flag out of some other material?
Like a starched flag.
Yeah, right. Whatever Republicans put on the back of their Jeeps.
And that would have been something for Buzz Aldrin to do. Just wave the starched flag. That edited out his hand.
So a couple more of these because I think they're really special.
Yeah.
6% of people have decided they can't go to the moon for the same reason that I can't go to Coachella, and that is that they're too old.
Yeah. Well, fair enough.
Yeah.
Even though guaranteed safety, plus you would think being old, lighter gravity.
If you're guaranteed anything when you get old, that seems like a success. I'm guaranteed to get back.
Well, and also
done.
Think about if you trip and fall, you're afraid of breaking your hip.
Yeah.
It'd be this nice slow descent to the surface.
Yeah, you'd have plenty of time.
Yeah,
I think the moon should be one of the elderly's first places to look for a vacation.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm considering retiring there.
9% of people in the UK say there's no point in visiting the moon.
This goes back to the nothing to see and do. I can immediately think of 4 or 5 things to do. You see the flag. You go see the footsteps of the first astronauts. Those are still protected. No wind blowing them away. You could have a jumping contest. That's, because you can go a lot further than you can on Earth.
Sure.
Another reason for old people to go, relive your youth when you could jump far.
And people love a swimming pool. Folks, this is everything around you. You can just float around. You don't even need a swimming pool.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with the you can pee in your suit. So
that's not a
you'll basically live in a swimming pool.
For the elderly, that seems like part of their routine. So
the more we're talking about it, I'm thinking a retirement home on the moon that's a crackerjack business idea.
So, and then 9% of people, and this is the most British answer to the question, 9% of people rejected the premise of the question. They were just like, no, you can't get back safely.
It's because they're all so high on Brexit right now that, they're just questioning everything. That, they feel like they've succeeded on Brexit. They can just, I don't believe that you're saying it's a trap. You're trying to trap me on the moon.
Exactly. That's a great accent.
Thank you very much. I've always, how there's 15 different British accents. So when you go to do one, you have to commit. It's either going to be like Cockney Michael Caine, or it's going to be, the former Prince Harry.
Yeah, I can't do the Prince Harry. I can do more of the Great Expectations Pip.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty in keeping with your actual background.
Any change, governor. Yeah, exactly.
Throwing governor, chimney sweeps, you're right there. And then there's Dick Van Dyke, who didn't even pretend to have one. Just kind of made one up.
Well, look, if friends over in the UK, if you do get invited on a free trip to the moon and you've decided there's nothing to do with see there, send the ticket my way, because I will take the ticket. Kiernan is a little, he's scared of flying. He's like 4% of Britons. So he doesn't want to go, but I'll go.
Listen, I'm an extremely comfortable flyer. I do think being strapped into a spaceship, I would have some agita, but I would remind myself, you know what? The pollster said I'm guaranteed safe. So just settle and take a nap. I'm fine. Great recalculating, Ryan. Always want to explore space tourism.
Yeah.
It might be time for a follow-up episode on that. Always new paths going forward. We've got great companies that are opening up the stars to us. But listen, I want to stay a little closer to home.
Yeah, today we're not going to space.
No. In fact, we're going to go just 6-hour drive north of Boston. We are going to Quebec City. So I think it's time to take off.
Flight attendants?
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
All right, Ryan. Now, I'm right, you haven't been to Quebec City, right?
I have not been to Quebec City. No, I'm so excited to learn from you, Kiernan. Just sit at the feet of the master and learn about Quebec City.
So, do you know anything about it?
Oh, I know that it's in Canada. I know that it is.
So the answer is no.
I know that it's the capital of Quebec.
So, Ryan, Quebec City is also kind of like the founding city of Canada. This is where the Canadian dream started, because it's right on the St. Lawrence River. So you know where that is.
Yeah, it's right by Quebec City.
Well, I mean, you're really just defining it by what I just told you about it. But the St. Lawrence River is a major North American river, and it's sort of that that throughway out to the northern Atlantic Ocean. So it breaks through to the Great Lakes, and it's an extremely important thoroughfare in trading. So as you would expect, Quebec City kind of built up around a port there. But it's where the first settlers came to establish this kind of dream of a new France. Like how we have New England, they have New France. And so the kind of founding father, Samuel de Champlain, and the other settlers arrived in 1608, where Quebec City stands today.
And this must be the same Champlain that Lake Champlain is named after, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, little known fact, the drink champagne is named for him.
No, it's not.
That's true. It's not. but I dream of you going to, a slick Manhattan dinner party. They're serving champagne. And you say, now, is everyone familiar with Samuel de Champlain?
Totally off topic, kind of, but was at a French restaurant for my significant other's birthday over the weekend.
Sure.
And on the menu was the côte bouffe. Right?
Beautiful French, by the way.
Thank you. So this is what the point of the story is.
I thought that we were picking up a French broadcast on the mic, and it had accidentally switched over to that. It was so fluent. The accent was just perfect.
Well, I got accused. I was made fun of because the person I was with said that you don't say boof, you say beef. And I pulled a Kiernan. I went over to the YouTube.com and I typed in Côte de Bouffe. And lo and behold, I was right.
You say it like a Muppet, though. You're going boof. You're really leaning into the boof.
Most of my French comes from those two old men on the balcony. They were French, right? They
isn't boofing what Kavanaugh was doing?
Oh my God, this is a good episode for Twitter, folks. Anyway, back to your champagne supernova.
So what's so interesting about Quebec City is that you can still very much feel this rich history here, spanning all the way back to 1608, and the area was under French control for over 100 years, 1608 to 1759. This was the new France. And, that's obviously why they still speak French today. The sign is in French. And as far as like the Canadian government goes, French is always, you often see Trudeau up there speaking English, saying the same thing in French. And that's because there's a huge portion of the country that is the lingua franca. And
often Quebec is less these days, but there was a movement for Quebec to become its own country.
Yeah,
and whenever I'm in Quebec, I like to stir the pot. I like to, when I'm buying coffee,
sure,
you all should leave this oppressive Canadian government.
I mean, same reason that you were always stirring up trouble in Catalonia, and really, you're due to Scotland any day now.
I've been to Scotland to stir up trouble, no doubt.
I mean, listen, I'm really holding out hopes for Scotland. I mean, they would be smart. Yeah. Should I take that political position?
I have. Is Prince Harry and Princess Duchess Meghan, are they going to move to Quebec when they?
I believe that they are not moving to Quebec.
Of course, they're going to move to like Toronto,
going to the West Coast. No, yeah. I think they're going like more Vancouver. No, but they actually the royal family owns a house on an island out on that side.
Doesn't
of the country.
Royal family own Canada? Isn't Canada just like
I wouldn't say own, but yeah, I mean they're moving to friendly territory. But I think the idea is because they want to be financially independent, which I think is very funny. Like, why would anybody choose to be financially independent? I want to be as financially dependent as possible.
Yeah. I don't think anybody in the real world believes they're going to be financially independent, right? No matter what the deal is, the prince will find money somewhere.
I think the idea is that, they want a quick commute to LA so that Duchess Markle can continue her acting career.
That's what's important here.
I mean, I definitely see her taking on the great roles of queens past. I think that would be a great way to stick it to the royal. Meghan Markle is Queen Victoria.
Meghan Markle, Elizabeth. Yeah, I love it. I love it.
She could be the last series of The Crown. She could be the oldest Elizabeth. That's brilliant. That is brilliant.
Let's make that happen.
So it was New France, 1608 to 1759. But this is what I find so fascinating. I was not fully aware of this, which was this whole area was taken over by the British in a war in 1759, and it was technically ruled by the British Empire for the next 100 years. So you figure that the kind of the empire was trying to force English to take hold, but the Quebecese really hung on to their French, and it persists to today. And I just find that so interesting that you can see the history, come through in the language. 100 years of English, and they still haven't adopted it wholeheartely.
Yeah, I mean, the English had a rough go of it over here in North America.
Yeah, that's true. They never. But to your point, they've done just fine in Canada in the long haul. I mean, the Queen's still on the money.
Totally. Wouldn't it be nice if they took the Queen off of their currency and put Duchess Meghan on the currency instead? That would be something.
That would be a big swing to get that through. I mean, what is so fascinating is that you are right that Queen Elizabeth still is technically, she has an official title, which is Queen of Canada. So, while we think of them as a full democracy, this is still a parliamentary system where the Queen is the head of state, and that's the reason that they're part of the Commonwealth, and she's still on the money.
Yeah, no offense to the Queen, but I would pick Justin Trudeau over her. I don't know why that is.
I don't know. She's had very limited blackface photos come out. So in that way, she's much more qualified than Trudeau.
Yeah, no, that's the her kooky sister. I'm sure has done blackface. Princess Margaret.
All right. So maybe we can. So what I really want to focus on, though, in giving just that tiny slice of history is Quebec City is one of these extremely charming historic cities. So, it continues to reinvent itself. It has up and coming neighborhoods, but kind of the core of it reminds me, and this might be a weird comparison, but I think you'll get it, which is, have you been to Charleston?
Oh, I love Charleston, yeah.
You know how the joy of Charleston is not like going after any specific sites or like a museum you have to see or like this, hot new thing that you got to check out while it's time limited in town. But it's really just walking around in the ambiance of Charleston, and it feels kind of curated and of a moment.
Right.
That, to me, that's what Quebec City feels like, which is it's a joy to just wander and explore. I remember last week you were saying one frustration with Medellin was it's not a walkable town. Quebec is a highly, highly walkable town.
Are there places to walk to, or is it just sort of
Well,
just sort of
yeah. I'm going to take us through
I
the
thought this was going to be it. You're like, just walk around.
So just walk around. Yeah, it's easy. No, I mean, what's interesting what's interesting about it is that the geography actually creates two really distinct parts of Quebec City. So you have the upper town and you have the lower town. And there's actually a cliff that like very dramatically separates the two of them. And on the upper town, that's where you're going to find kind of the cute shops and where you have a beautiful view out across the St. Lawrence River. And I think I had mentioned to you, Ryan, I was there in the dead of winter. It was like right between Christmas and New Year's. And I'm not going to lie to you. It is as cold as it is very, very cold. You really want to bundle up at that time of year. And most of my observations are Quebec City in the winter. Because I don't think it's obvious that you would want to go so far north to a very cold place. But the stark beauty that you get looking out across the St. Lawrence River, and it's just packed with ice floes. So you have these enormous chunks of ice. Like you would think that you were, closer to the Arctic because you have huge blocks of ice. They look like mini icebergs just floating down this riverway. And you are standing kind of on the edge of a cliff looking down over the lower town. So it's extremely dramatic contrast. You're very close to nature in that way.
That sounds beautiful.
And so I thought we would talk about the upper town first and then talk about the lower town, even though the lower town is actually that's the 1608 settlement. That's where it all kind of started. They started close to the water, on the banks, near the port, and that's where we'll kind of end up the episode.
And do they call it upper town and lower town? Like that's like the way that they speak of it locally?
Yeah, it is.
If I was a real estate agent, I would name upper town something hip like Upto. It's like
Upto and Loto.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
I got some condos for sale. We're Upto, some good Upto condos.
Oh, it's an Upto. I hear that's a good neighborhood.
Very up and coming.
So in French, it's Hauteville for upper town. So how would you collapse those? Hawaii?
I would just be selling to English language transplants.
Oh, wow, that would be discriminatory.
That would be my marketing strategy.
At the bottom of the cliff, that's lower town, Baseville. And what's very exciting, just to give you a little teaser, Ryan, when we go between the upper and lower town, there is a funicular.
And I know what a funicular is.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it in a few minutes.
Sure.
So
good.
In the upper town, there is one building that kind of stands out above it all because it literally stands on this high up crest. And that's one thing that you're going to notice as you're walking around the city is it's a pretty steep city. So you're going to want to bring a good pair of shoes to do all this walking, good pair of winter boots. And you're going to feel it in your thighs a little bit, but kind of at the highest crest of the upper town is this beautiful hotel. It calls itself the most photographed hotel in the world, and it's called Chateau Frontenac. And it is majestic and imposing. It was built in 1893, and it looks more than anything like a castle. It was intentionally made to look like a mix of European styles. It definitely takes some from kind of like Scottish castles, but it has these kind of soaring towers. It looks a little bit Hogwartsian, I would say. And I didn't get to stay there, but it's certainly a place where you would want to, spend some time going through the lobby and taking in this kind of historic ambiance. This is the center of the upper town. And it actually sits on a place that has a rich history itself, because this is where the governor of New France and then the British governors who came afterwards, this is where their residence was. So while that residence doesn't stand anymore, they decided to build this big chateau right on top of it so that you can still get that kind of great imposing feel.
And I hope you're going to share a photo of this on the old Instagram.
Oh, of course. At OOO Podcast. We'll definitely have some pictures this week. And, it is extremely picturesque. I have to believe that it might be one of the most photographed hotels. I'm trying to think if there's another hotel I guess I would have guessed, the Park Plaza would be extremely well photographed. But this is much more dramatic than that.
Yeah, no, it sounds very dramatic.
And one of the cool things that they do at this hotel is during the winter, they set up a huge toboggan slide, and it is right on the edge of the cliff so that you get this enormous view that it's extremely windy. And, I feel like as an adult, you don't often get a chance to go out tobogganing, sledding. There's rarely enough snow for that. This is a triple chute toboggan run. It's along what they call Dufferin Terrace, which is right next to the hotel. And you can get hot chocolate there, and it's a very kind of family friendly area. But this slide, it's a quarter of a mile long, and it's quite steep. You can do 2 people on a toboggan. Well, we did 2 people on a toboggan. I think if you're small enough, you could actually fit 3 on a toboggan. And this thing just shoots you down. I guess that's maybe why they call it a chute, different sort of chute. But it shoots you down, and you are looking over the edge. You feel like you're about to shoot straight into the St. Lawrence, though I don't think that's ever actually happened. But a toboggan slide. This is why you need to go to Quebec City in winter, because this disappears. I think it comes down in March.
So Quebec City is best experienced in the winter for this toboggan-y.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
I think that if you're looking for a quintessential Canadian winter experience, Quebec City is probably the best place that you can go, because I'm also going to have a recommendation a little further on about how you can mix in a little winter weather, a little winter nature fun that's not too far out of the city. But I would suggest, you feel like a kid again, go do this toboggan ride.
I am very intrigued by this. I haven't been tobogganing in years.
Were you able to toboggan when you were a kid? Because you lived on the shore. Didn't know if there were toboggan areas.
One of my childhood homes, we had quite a beautiful hill, and we would toboggan quite a bit. And then in the summer, because I was basically Huck Finn, we would take pieces of wood and use wax paper to make them really, really, really slippery, and then go down the hill without even needing snow, just like on the grass.
That's exactly what happens in Huck Finn. Clearly, you've read it.
Oh, no. I meant just outdoorsy. That's what I mean when I say Huck Finn, not anything else.
Okay, now another thing that I would recommend you do as you're kind of covering the city and you're taking a walk, there's no place to get better views than to walk the fortifications that surround the old Quebec City. Because this is actually the only fully fortified city in North America. You know how when you go to Europe, you often get these cities where the town walls are still standing, or part of the walls are still standing. It's from the days where, you used to have to close up shop and defend yourself.
Sure.
That's what they built in Quebec City, because the New France was trying, they knew they had enemies out there looking at you, Britain. And so they built these fortifications. And you can take a super beautiful long walk all around the city, see all different parts of the city, and get some great views and great photographs by kind of trundling along these fortifications. Well worth a couple hours.
One of your reoccurring themes here, Kiernan, are walls. Have you ever noticed that?
No, I haven't noticed that. But when I think about it, what's not to like about a wall?
I'm a building bridges guy. You're a wall admirer.
I don't have any bridges in this guide, but to me, I would recommend this wall. It goes the walking in total comes to 4.6 kilometers, which of course I'm using kilometers because we're in Canada, folks. You're going to have to get used to the metric system.
That's like 15 miles, right?
15 to 38 miles. Yeah,
right.
It fluctuates depending on what time of year you're looking at the conversion.
there's nothing more funny than being in a country like Canada where folks, so this is a very specific problem, Kiernan, that you've never had, but Grindr is in feet and inches. And so folks don't know often how to translate their height into that, and so things will just not make any sense. Like this person is 4'7". I mean, like that. Are you really? You don't look 4'7".
And another thing that you'll be able to explore from those walls is what's called La Citadelle, and it is the historic citadel that the British built in Quebec City to protect their kind of new holdings in North America. And in fact, it is the largest British fortress that was ever built in North America. So it now kind of looks like a park. It's got these, they have historic cannons set up as if they were protecting the city. But it still stands. It's kept in good shape. And it's just something to check out as you're walking the city, because really these walls give you the kind of the bird's eye view of Quebec City. So you can get all those photographs of the most photographed hotel in the world.
A lot of good Instagram material in Quebec, it seems like.
Indeed. And Ryan, I can't resist giving just one historic space that you should be checking out. And it's called the Battle. It's the Park of the Battle of the Plains of Abraham. Okay, it sounds very biblical, right?
It sounds like something out of like the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, right. So what it actually is this is the place that the Quebecese consider where the French lost to the British in 1759. So it's called the Plains of Abraham, and that name actually goes back to just the person who originally owned this area. In 1635, a guy named Abraham Martin, he had 12 acres of land, and it was basically set aside. It just happened to be where the battle took place. So yeah, it sounds kind of Book of Mormon-y, but it's actually just Abraham Martin. You've never heard of him in the Bible.
And this is like the big final battle.
So this was the big final battle. So basically, the way the history here is the British were trying to lock down control of all of North America, and so they set up their sort of battlements north of Quebec. And they had their eyes on the city, but because the city was protected by these major walls, these fortifications that you're gonna have walked along, the city was able to protect itself really well and hold out quite well, even despite the fact that they were under siege. And this siege was basically going on for 3 months. And with winter approaching in the year of 1759. The folks in Quebec City were waiting for supply shipments from Britain. And this is where the British saw their opportunity. And so with these supplies being expected by the community, this is when the British struck. They actually kind of rode into the city. They quietly climbed to the Plains of Abraham. And the story goes that it was all over in 15 minutes, that the British were such a superior force and that they were there in time. The Quebecese didn't have their, full supplies, and the British took over, and the city capitulated, and therefore, 100 years, the British were able to rule and build things like the Citadel. So, if you do want just a tiny bit of the local history, that's where I recommend you go. It's a quite picturesque area, and nothing in Quebec City is too terribly far from one another. So easy to work into the kind of walking around in the upper town that I'm sort of painting for you.
You know that I love to visit battlefields, so that I would most definitely be there. I was looking at some of the famous images from this battle, and we're going to have to share this one on the Instagram because this general, Wolf, his name is.
Wolf, yep.
He reminds me, he has a very Kiernan expression on his face as he lay there at the end of his
what does that mean, a
battle.
Kiernan expression?
I mean, look at it and tell me that he's not Kiernan-esque.
Kind of a Schmidt eating grin.
He's just sort of, I don't know how to describe it, but when you see it, you'll be like, oh, I get it. I'm a little bit.
All right. Well, listen, General James Wolfe, the British army head there, let him rest in peace. Let's not besmirch him with saying that he looks too much like me. Right. The other thing I want to mention before we get down to the lower town is, we still haven't done that episode that I want to do of traveling while Catholic. But if you love churches, the Quebec City is a great place for you to go. There's a lot of. Have you ever traveled in like a predominantly Catholic country, Rye?
Anytime I visit my relatives. I mean, obviously Ireland is pretty Catholic.
So I remember I felt it especially in Poland, which is like if you grew up Catholic and you go to a country, especially Catholic in the U.S.
Is that the authoritarianism you feel, or the Catholicism? Or it's sometimes hard to separate.
That's true. Well, I mean, they're kind of tied together in the Catholic Church too. When you go to a country that is predominantly one religion, in this case, I'm thinking of Catholicism, you can really just kind of feel it in the air. And the fact that you're going to pass Catholic churches, every block, that's what it is like in Quebec City. Because keep in mind, it started as New France, and with the French culture came the Catholic religion, and it still has a lot of hold and presence in Quebec City. So there's lots of Catholic churches that you could check out. And one of my favorite experiences when Kath and I were there were we were staying in a kind of up and coming neighborhood, a pretty hip neighborhood called St. Roch. Okay. And that's where our hotel was. And we ended up being on a hotel floor that was quite high up. And when we got into the room, I opened the windows and we were looking directly into the courtyard of a huge Catholic church. And on the top, there was a saint statue. I love a saint statue. There's Absolutely. A saint statue of a saint with a dog next to him. And I was thinking to myself, God, I have no idea what Catholic saint that is. I really want to know why there's a dog there. And then I realized this church is the Church of St. Roch. And I should, by the way, let you know, Roch is spelled Roch, if you want to do some further research yourself. And St. Roch, also known as St. Rocco, I came to find out. He was born in 1295, lived to 1327. He was a French nobleman and a devout Catholic who it was said that he had a deep red mark on his chest in the shape of the cross, as one does. Typically, if you're born with that, you're probably going to be a saint. And that he, as a Franciscan, he went out to communities that were suffering from the Black Plague. And he, in these medieval times, he would, his sort of, the miracles that are attributed to him was that he was capable of curing people with the plague. He would visit and then suddenly they would be okay. But in time, it turned out that he himself contracted the plague and he had an open wound on his leg. But Ryan, this is where the story goes off the rails in a way.
This is not good so far.
This is the only way that a Catholic could make this. You know how we like bloody crosses and like the blood of Christ and all this.
Sure.
So St. Roch had an open wound on his leg. Just pussy. Open, the plague, and apparently a hunting dog came up to him as he was roving through the countryside and began to lick his wound. And this dog healed St. Roch's Black Plague wound. And that's why he is the patron saint of dogs. And if you see him in paintings and statues, he's always standing there with a dog. Sometimes he even has an open wound.
Can dogs really heal open wounds infected with the plague?
I mean, you know what?
I know man's best friend, but that's
Ryan, I'm no doctor.
Yeah. I would think that if I had an open wound, that having a dog lick it would make it maybe even more likely to be infected.
Well, listen, that was not St. Roch's experience, but then again, he was a saint, and that's the miracle that goes for him. So I loved that we were in a hotel room that directly faced the statue. I found out this great saint history, and in fact, that's when it kind of clicked for me. The name of the neighborhood, and this is a neighborhood I'd recommend you check out when you go to Quebec City, is called St. Roch, and it's after this church, this saint. And it's an area. It has a lot of really interesting kind of arty shops, but it also is a real food center. And so there's good kind of fancy meals. There's good pizza. There's good poutine. Of course, you got to get poutine when you go to Canada, and good fun bars. And I'm going to make a couple bar recommendations. And probably, if you're only going to visit one, you can't do better than visiting the cathedral. It's called the Basilica Cathedral Notre Dame de Quebec. And this is sort of the quintessential church of Quebec City, and it has lots of history of governors being buried there in the crypts. And there's even a rumor that Samuel de Champlain is himself buried in the crypt, though they're still searching for where he might be.
He's probably, knowing the Catholics, they always just move people without their permission, to like some other place.
Yeah. Also, in the same kind of traditional Catholic way, the place is burned down a bunch of times. They rebuilt it. So, I feel like when you rebuild it, you can make up a lot of stuff. I mean, who knows what they're going to say about Notre Dame when they get that roof back.
Yeah. Well, we that's a recalculating we might have to revisit because things are going poorly over there.
Are they going poorly?
Yeah, now they're saying that they might not actually be able to rebuild. It might be
serious?
Too damaged. Yeah, this was like last week.
Holy shit.
I know.
Oh, we got to do a recalculating.
Definitely.
Yeah, bad news in fact, we do have to do a follow-up on that maybe next episode. So, Ryan, we've covered the Upper Town. We've talked a little bit about St. Roch, a great, cool neighborhood. And on now we've got to get to the Lower Town. And the Lower Town, it is a steep drop between the Upper Town and the Lower Town. And there's basically two ways to get down there. One is what is rightly called the breakneck stairs. It's particularly that in the winter time of year because it gets kind of icy. But you can take a very steep set of stairs all the way down to the Lower Town. Or you can do what I would recommend, which is ride the funicular. And the funicular, Ryan, you're going to remember because you just learned this. What is a funicular?
It is obviously one of those devices that takes you up the side of a mountain, a very steep hill.
But it's not just a device. It's a railway.
It's a railway
built on a steep incline. And this one was built in 1879. It was steam powered back then. Now it's electric. It originally was used for moving goods up and down because you had the port down on the banks of the river and you wanted to move stuff to the Upper Town, to the walled town up there. And now it's mostly used for transporting people back and forth. And it runs year round. And I think you get a quite dramatic entry into the Lower Town by getting on the funicular in the Upper Town and chugging your way down. And it just takes a couple minutes. But I think it's a quintessential Quebec City experience. And it's definitely going to be in the funicular episode that we talk that we're planning. Maybe the big ending to 2020.
That's going to be an exciting episode, folks.
So the Lower Town is if there's anything that is a little sort of Disneyfied about Charleston, it can feel like maybe a little superficially kept quaint. The Lower Town has a little bit of that feel about it. Like it feels very much like it's built for the tourist centers. It's got, nice kind of coffee shops, maybe a little overpriced. It's got gift shops. It does have some like artist hangouts that are a little more authentic to the area. But what I would suggest you kind of notice most down here is that it does feel like one of those original cities where like the lanes are very tight together. You get houses that are at odd angles, and you should really just kind of wander down here, take in the ambience, maybe pick up a souvenir or two. But the Lower Town really is more about you kind of have to check the box by visiting it. But I will say I have a slight preference for the Upper Town. So, this you're going to hit the cobblestone streets. You're going to see the kind of boutique restaurants. You can often get kind of Airbnbs or like cute little places to stay down there. But I would really just recommend this kind of one street to get this feel. It's called the Rue sous le Cap. And I had this on my radar from the Moon Guide, which I used to plan my trip down there. And what that means is it's the street beneath the Cape. And it's called that because it is the street that like directly abuts this steep cliff behind you. So, if you're coming down those breakneck stairs, that's where you would be ending up on this street. This is one of these historic streets that it would never be built by city planners today. It's actually only 3 meters across. And it is such a little narrow street because it actually used to be the only pedestrian way to get from your houses out to kind of the main market street there today. And for a time, Ryan, given that we were just talking about Catholicism, I feel a little flushed just saying this, but it used to be the red light district. Used to be. So you're probably not that interested in going today.
No, I don't want to go anywhere that used to be the red light district.
Right.
No, but
you're asking me where is the current red light district?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But what I also
That's
love
a different podcast.
This detail that, just to give you a sense of how close to the banks of the river the low town is, this street also used to get submerged during high tide. So it's been built up since, but that's how like in touch with the waterfront this neighborhood is. So go down to the lower town. I would, put aside a few hours in the afternoon to kind of go by, but recognize that this is going to be more your tourist center. And a place like the neighborhood St. Roch that I was talking about, that's much more where I feel like you get today's kind of vibrant, young, arty Quebec City. And if you do get over to St. Roch, right, I just want to give two really good food recommendations. And there's tons of good food there. I really didn't want to like put a stake in the ground for like go to this restaurant because the food scene is so vibrant in Quebec City. I don't know if you know that. It's a real foodie capital. And in fact, Anthony Bourdain has a great episode in Quebec City. But of course, that too gets outdated. But there are these two kind of fun mainstays that I would say, these aren't your great cuisine, but they're places you should check out. The first is called MacFly Bar Arcade, MacFly Bar Arcade, MacFly Bar Arcade. And it is one of these really fun bars that have all of these old arcade games. And, I often feel like these kind of barcades, this concept that I have seen sprouting up a bit in the U.S., oftentimes they're like crazy crowded and you're not able to like get to the games or there's just like kind of these lame old games. This is not like that. It is packed with fun old games. If you like things like Ready Player One, many of the games that are mentioned in that book and movie, you'll be able to play here. In fact, I had read that shortly after visiting Quebec City, and it made a lot more sense because of MacFly Bar Arcade. So laid back. You could stay there for hours and hours, and even if you're not a video game person, because I'm not a huge video game person, still a really fun and unique place to stop.
That sounds very cool. And you didn't play a specific game that you remember?
Yeah, right. Actually, the game that I most vividly remember playing was called Joust. And this actually is mentioned in Ready Player One.
Sure. And Joust is the one where the little birds, you're flying on like pterodactyls or something. You have like your spear and you have to hit your...
So you're a knight and you're on a flying ostrich.
Ostrich. Okay. I knew it was flying something. This is something I played as a kid.
But it came out in 1982. So you were already, 23 at that time?
Well, I had an Atari 2600, but we don't need to unpack that.
So actually, if you had it, I would really want to unpack it. It just transports you back. It's like a laid back, fun place. It's totally unsceney. And like there are restaurants in this area that are very sceney. I recommend, go out, ease yourself into your night out by getting a couple beers at MacFly Bar Arcade, loosen up, have some fun, and then you could go to your nicer place.
That sounds like a fantastic evening that you've planned for us.
And then, I'm a big beer drinker. I really like beers, and there's a ton of microbreweries around town near Quebec City and in Quebec City. But there's one that really appealed to me. It's called La Barberie. So it's LABARBERIE. And it's in that St. Roch neighborhood. And it's very laid back. It's like a cool kind of pubby vibe. But what I love is that they have all these kind of specialty beers, and you can buy. You know how you can often get a flight of beers.
Absolutely, yeah. To try a bunch of different ones.
Yeah.
Sure.
So at this place, you can actually get 8 glasses or pints of beer, and they come in this like wooden carousel that they plop down on your table. And like that could be kitschy, but it's actually a really cool, fun experience. It's a great way, especially if you're with somebody else. You could try basically all the beers that they have there. And, it's a very kind of unrushed, laid-back place. You can tell that it's a crowd of mostly locals, that maybe the tourists don't all get there. And, I think it's also a good place for families. Like, some bars could be, have a little bit, the music's too loud or it's a little vibe. I mean, now that I have Charlie, I guess I'm a little more attuned to that. But, La Barberie, great beers, great presentation, and a really fun laid-back place to go before you go out to your fancy foodie spots.
Charlie loves doing beer flights, from what I remember from Instagram.
I mean, listen, as long as it doesn't flow too hard out of the bottle, you just put that nipple right on the top of the pint glass, and he goes to town.
a true Irishman.
All right. And the last thing that I want to talk about in Quebec City is actually just outside Quebec City. And that is that it is very easy to experience nature just within a 45-minute drive of the city. So while Catherine and I were there, we had a car. And we had the foresight to pack our snowshoes just in case we would get the opportunity. And as it happened, there was a fresh snow in Quebec City. And so I looked, and the road conditions looked all right the next day. And Ryan, you're not going to be surprised by this. We decided to make our way to a national park that is just outside Quebec City.
You went to a national park?
So while we were there in winter, I understand this is also just breathtaking in the summer months, and it's called the Jacques-Cartier National Park, and it's basically it's a gorgeous kind of rolling hills park. You can go out into the forest. What we did was we snowshoed on a path into the forest, and there weren't a ton of people, but there were some families out there cross country skiing. And they also do these rental of fat tire bikes. Do you know those?
Fat tire bikes? No, it sounds like a Queen song.
Oh, so this is something I've actually noticed getting more popular at tourist destinations, which is they're bikes that have tires that are probably, I want to say, 4 to 6 inches thick, wide. And the idea is that you can actually bike through moderate snow with them. And so this is a cool opportunity to like take them out onto the trails. They're not motorized. I mean, you're gonna work your legs quite a bit. And we didn't end up doing that, but it was definitely something that seemed appealing to me. We had the snowshoes, so we opted for that. But it was just a gorgeous way to see kind of new fallen snow, of kind of vast expanses. There was a beautiful lake there, and then kind of feel like you escape the city, even when you can be back in half an hour, 45 minutes. So the Jacques-Cartier National Park, just outside Quebec City, I would say well worth renting a car, and don't let the winter scare you away from it. There's a lot to do there too.
To be fair, Kiernan, you're sort of a big fan of winter national park travel in a way that not all folks are.
No, fair enough. But I hope that I've convinced you that this is a great city to walk around, to explore, even during those very cold winter months. I think that the crowning reason to go to Quebec City during the winter is to see those ice floes on the St. Lawrence River. I found that so striking, so beautiful. And, it's also, you can get better prices around the winter time of year. And it makes going inside the warm bars and restaurants and bakeries just all the more pleasing when you've been out exploring and walking for an hour. But bring your Canadian Goose. I mean, come on.
Wait, Canadian Goose is a brand of jacket.
Yes. Oh, but you could also bring a Canadian Goose, of course. I mean, you are in Canada.
Right. Yeah. And they're delicious.
I can't say I've ever dined upon Canadian Goose.
I don't know. I mean, in case you get lost, you might have to. So can you give us sort of the quick sort of, you've said a lot as usual, Kiernan. Can you give us sort of the roundup of...
I'm sorry, was it too much, Ryan?
Yeah. No.
So, the basic layout of the city is you've got the upper town, you've got the lower town. I would recommend spending maybe a bit more time in the upper town and in the kind of hipper neighborhood of St. Roch. And in the upper town, you definitely want to check out the Chateau Frontenac. And if you're there at the right time of year, you should certainly do the toboggan slide. Well worth the time and the money, a unique experience as an adult. You can get great views across the city by walking the fortifications. And as you do that, you might stop by the Citadel. You might stop by the park of the Plains of Abraham, which is that historic park that we talked about. Then you're going to want to either take the breakneck stairs or the funicular down to the lower town. This is the more touristy area. You're going to get kind of the more curated tourist experience down there, but it's still, it has its charms. Well worth an afternoon or a day. And then I would recommend that you retreat to some of the great foodie spots that you have. The two that I think are kind of timeless and that aren't going to change are the MacFly Bar Arcade, which is super fun, old, 1980s video game consoles, and it's not too crowded. You can actually get to play them. And if you like beer, I recommend La Barberie, which is a great laid-back bar where you can get a carousel of their house-made beers. Plus, if you have time, I would definitely recommend you get just outside of the city to Jacques-Cartier National Park. If it's winter, bring your cross-country skis, bring your snowshoes, maybe rent a fat tire bike if you've never tried that. And if it's summer, I understand beautiful. You can hike along all of these paths. You can pack a picnic, and it's a great way to experience the beautiful nature that Canada also has to offer.
Well, I feel like I am going to book my trip to Quebec pretty soon.
You love my minute summaries.
I do love your minute summaries. I think
that should be a separate pod.
We should just release those as a pod. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Well, Ryan, I got to start the drive back down to the United States. So I think we've covered Quebec City pretty well. I would suggest it's time for the last stop.
The last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
Now, Ryan, this is the final segment of the show. It's the last segment of the show. That's why it's called the last stop. It's the last stop of the show. And it's your favorite segments, my favorite segments, popularly known as the people segment. And it's where we each take a moment to share one thing that has really, encouraged traveling within us. So it might be something we saw or we visited or we cooked or we bought. It really, the category is broad, but that is to allow us to fill it with our creativity and our personal experience to tell the world one thing that fed the spirit of wanderlust within us even during the workaday week. So Ryan, with that, I will ask you what I ask you each and every week. Do you have a last stop this week?
I do have a last stop, Kieran. Thank you for asking. So over the weekend, I was trying to relax and unplug. You and I lead busy.
Yeah, no, you're always working so hard. If there's one thing
thank you.
I think when I think of you, it's working hard.
That is so true. And I needed to unplug. And I was, Googling around to figure out, it has been a while since I've been to a really good immersive experience.
Oh, I have noticed that. Not many immersive experiences coming on the pod lately.
Well, that's changing today because over the weekend, my friend and I checked out the luxury escapism, oddly satisfying spa.
What is that?
This is not a traditional spa where there's like water, This is what they call a multi-sensory environment. That includes things like immersive technology, ASMR,
okay.
And other sort of
ASMR,
exactly, and other sort of tactile stimulation. So, one of the coolest. So you go. It's like a 2-hour block that you book. This isn't obviously in Brooklyn. I don't need to say that. I don't think, but clearly in Brooklyn, you book it in 2-hour spot. And you get to sort of experience this space where there's a lot of little things for you to, relax and spend time with. My favorite, I think, of all the little sort of mini experiences that you get in this spa is what they call the rainbow waterbed. Now, I haven't been in a waterbed for like 15 years. So just the idea of being in a waterbed is magical to me. But this is it's a 3 to 4 minute experience where you lay in a waterbed that vibrates, and there's this sort of strobe light that goes into your eyes, and with multicolored colors and form. At the same time, you're wearing a headset, and you're getting sort of audible relaxation kind of vibes, and it feels very relaxed.
Wait, what's an audible relaxation vibe?
Like just like ASMR kind of. Oh, yeah, like noises and calm. But because of the sort of intensity of the light and the waterbed experience, you sort of get a little out of body kind of. It's like what I would imagine tripping would be in a way. You feel kind of like you're floating because you've got this very intense light situation happening over top of you. And you've got the waterbed, and you've got this, and so after a minute or two, you do kind of feel disconnected from your body in a very pleasant, unusual way. So that I really liked. And then the second thing that I think was super cool was the sonic sauna. And this is like 4 people at a time go in this room that is completely pitch black and completely soundproof. And they play this sort of audio scape of various noises, wilderness noises, ocean noises. But because it's so dark and quiet and there's nothing else happening, and you really start to almost imagine that you're in the wilderness or that you're on this, it sort of becomes, your brain's kind of like goes, oh, we must be here. So it sort of plays some tricks with your senses there. So interesting super unique experience, the Luxury Escapism Spa.
Boy, that is a really weird one, Ryan. I mean, that's like the most millennial, like out of touch, weird thing you've brought on the pod for a while.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to keep the pod hip. Well, you're talking about going to battlefields, and I'm talking about ASMR experiences.
Yeah, well, those don't have to be separate because General Wolfe fought in 1759. Actually, that's a great idea for a museum to create an ASMR audio guide option.
Yeah, I mean, the museums say millennials and Gen Z, they don't like our museum. It's just because you don't have ASMR audio.
Oh, it's so creepy.
Do you have a last stop for us, Keith?
I do have a last stop. My last stop, it's a show that I just took in at the Boston MFA, the Museum of Fine Arts, and it's called Ancient Nubia Now. And I didn't really know what to expect in this because I can't say that I was terribly familiar with Nubian culture. But it turns out to be a really fascinating museum kind of reflecting on its own role in shaping history. So I will say, by the way, that I caught it right at the end, but it's well worth keeping in mind what I'm about to say, because if you come to Boston, the MFA is committed to showing more of their vast Nubian collection, a lot of which was kind of being taken out of storage for the first time in a very long time for this show. So just assuming, Ryan, that you, like I, did not know much about Nubia, is that fair? Are you a Nubian scholar and I just don't know it?
I do not know. I mean, I don't know anything about Nubia.
So Nubia was basically a rival kingdom to the Egyptian civilization. And I'll just read to you from the Globe how they summed it up, because they put it really well. The 3 millennia history short version goes like this. Nubia rose along the banks of the Nile in 3000 BC as the kingdom of Kush. Egypt, faced with a formidable rival, conquered it around 1500 BC. And by 800 BC, Nubia rose again, taking control of the entire region for 100 years. And a lot of the artifacts, there's furniture, and there's jewelry, and there's tomb objects, and a lot of the stuff looks very similar to what you and I would associate, and most people would associate with Egyptian archaeology. But as it turns out, this sort of Nubian civilization was vastly sort of played down over the 20th century, because archaeologists brought basically a pretty racist attitude towards the study of them, where Nubia was a kingdom of dark-skinned African heritage, and these sort of early 1900 archaeologists were finding all of these great artifacts, and they said, well, they must have come from Egypt, because Egypt was kind of the great culture at that time, and Egypt clearly conquered them, and they traded with them, and probably held sway over them. But what the MFA is really making clear now is no. Nubia was a strong artistic rival to Egypt throughout these hundreds of years. And in fact, the story of the two civilizations is the push and pull of power between the two of them. And a lot of the wall texts really struggled with the fact that the MFA and to a certain degree Harvard sponsored a lot of these digs in the Nubian desert, and were part of shaping this history, what is pretty blatantly racist history. And the museum is now committing to giving Nubia its own in new galleries and new exhibitions. And Ancient Nubia Now was the kind of first step towards doing that. And everything here is just as mind-blowingly interesting as any Egyptian exhibition you've ever been to. And I'll post a photo or two from it on the Instagram at OOO Podcast. Particularly, I want to praise they had this display of what are called Schwabtes, which are these little funerary figures that were typically put in tombs, and they were meant to be like representatives of the deceased in the afterlife. You know how Egyptians used to get buried with like tons of servants and just trying to prepare for the afterlife.
Sure.
And they did it in this like long, quiet, dark hall, and they lit them from below, just rows and rows of these figures, and you had the feeling like you were walking into kind of a Nubian tomb that had been lost to time. And it was a beautiful display. It made me very, very interested in this culture, and I want to learn a lot more about it. And to me, that's like the highest mark of what a museum exhibition could do. It grappled with its own complicated history. It vowed to reform and make good in the future, and it taught me something really valuable. So really neat. I highly recommend you check out that Nubian collection at the MFA.
Now, Kiernan, as a musical theater person, have you ever seen Aida?
I never did see Aida.
Yeah.
It hasn't really been on in the last, when did that go out?
It closed like in the early aughts.
Yeah, the early aughts. That was before my time in New York.
Somebody who's been a musical theater fan my entire life, I can't, I don't have non-times where I haven't embraced the musical.
I mean, when you're born in 1953, you were already...
57. Eisenhower's a great man. Look, Aida did have a lot to do with this period and was about the struggle between Egypt and Nubia, told through Elton John songs.
Oh, it would be super fascinating to hold up the history that you learn in this exhibition against the storyline there.
I would really hope that the exhibition gets closer to the real story.
Absolutely. Well, it was an advanced civilization as far as clearly their military, their arts, their sciences. And, they had an empire unto themselves. So it's weird when we all, I feel like we all learn about the civil, it's like you learn about the Greeks, you learn about the Romans, you learn about the Egyptians. But I love finding out, the world was a lot more complicated than those simple lines of history allow.
Yeah, no, it is a big world and a lot of cultures have shaped it.
All right, Ryan. Well, we've covered off Quebec City. God, we've gone all the way back to ancient Nubia this week. This is a big week. What do you have in store for us next week?
I'm going to tell folks about Montreal, which is one of my favorite cities in North America. In fact, I often call it my third favorite city in North America.
Wow, is that so? That's amazing.
It is so. After folks don't have to guess what my first two are. It's pretty easy. But Montreal,
New York and Boston.
It's actually Boston twice. Yeah, but close. So yeah, we're going to unpack all the things to do in Montreal. I am a big fan of Montreal. Been a bunch of times, and actually went somewhat recently, a few months ago. So excited to unpack with one of my custom city guides.
Fantastic.
Montreal. Well, until then, Kiernan, au revoir, as they say in Quebec. I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a Canadian travel podcast.
This seat taken. Ryan, give me your best French. What can you really say fluently?
Beauty and the Beast. Bonjour. How's that?
Oh,
I'm like Belle.
All right.
I've always been sort of Belle-esque, don't you think?
This is why they don't let you in Montreal anymore.